Thank you for being on the podcast. I'm excited to have you here, Whitni Miller. So, I would love to know about your experience with pleasure coaching and sex education and how you got to be where you're at right now, because you have a very robust TikTok following as well as Instagram, and you're doing all the things. So, I'd love to know how you got here.
Oh, gosh, that's a really interesting story. So, I'm mostly self-taught. I have a huge sex education library. And because of that, like I would get in the back jacket and be like, who wrote this book? And I would email them and be like, can I help you disseminate information? And Dr. Lori Brotto was one of the people who wrote back and was like, yeah, I would love for you to help disseminate information about low desire. And her sexual health research team, and they're in British Columbia, Canada, and they kind of like watch my TikToks, and every once in a while they'll have a like or they'll comment something, and I'm like, that little seal of approval. So I got curious and wrote her an email, and I was like, hey, would you endorse me? And she was like, absolutely, I'll endorse you. So I have this letter of endorsement from Dr. Lori Brotto herself, who's like, yeah, Whitni is an intimacy expert. And then the people at Sexual Health Alliance have been watching my TikToks, and they deem me a sex expert. So yeah. So that was really cool. Really great for my imposter syndrome, because just being self-taught, I was like, I take everything back to the science, and I'm very redundant because of the imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, I don't want to lead the people in the wrong way. So I really appreciate like all these people stepping up and being like, yeah, no, you know what you're talking about. There's a lot of therapists, a lot of psychologists who are clients of mine, which has been really interesting. But like, if you're a general therapist, you usually have about 9 hours or less of sex education. And I have way more than that.
Yeah. So let's kind of like, if you don't mind, backtrack before that. Like, what spawned your curiosity with this to begin with, right? Because I'm a very like sexual person. I'm very interested in, pleasure, communication, all of those things. And I know where it derives from for me, but I'm interested as somebody who is very passionate about teaching that, where that started for you.
Oh, yeah. That goes all the way back to when I was 15 years old and I came out of the closet, and I was like, oh, I love women. I want to please women. And as anyone who's like an anxious person, you want all the information you can possibly get before you go to do that.
Right.
So when I was 15, it was Dr. Ruth. That's where you
Oh my
went.
gosh, that's a blast from the past.
Absolutely. Dr. Sue and Dr. Ruth. I was on it.
I
So I
love that.
bought Dr. Ruth, Sex for Dummies, read it cover to cover. And then when I would go to school, I grew up in East Tennessee. So very like Bible Belt. The sex education you're going to get is usually abstinence only. So there was a gap there. So for my peers, I would go to school and I would teach them. I'm like, oh, you don't know? Let me show you about the clitoris. Let me talk to you about the engorgement of the clitoris and
love
things
this.
like watch for these signs. So I've just been like self-taught and teaching other people sex ed since adolescence. It's like,
I love that. Did you carry that on into like your dating world, like early on, where you were just kind of out with that? Like, did you share that with other like people that you were dating and things like that? Or was it just something you kind of like secret in your back pocket?
Like the sex education knowledge?
Yeah.
I mean, I try to be smooth with it, like as far as dating, like would just pull tricks out of me, just like the way that I could pay attention to someone else's body, because as I'm watching for signs, instead of that, like your hand is shaking and wondering what to do next, I was more, I'm watching the other person, I'm listening to your breath, like things like that, and telling me. So I have had a lot of previous sexual partners who are like, you're really good at that. And I'm just, to me, it's just, I'm just listening to your body. Ultimately, like the sex educator that I am today was just inspired about 4 years ago from a partner that I had who was on SSRIs. So when you're on selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, you either can't have an orgasm or it's just really, really hard because of the way the medication works in the brain. And dating her, I had to learn that sex is more than orgasms. And I read Come As You Are by Dr. Emily Nagoski, and I read that one about 5 times and took what I learned there to help me have pleasure-based sex. And so that relationship with that woman really helped me open up and like be like, orgasms aren't even the best part. Wow.
Yeah.
Like my mind is blown. Like,
Yeah.
because she loved sex. She loved having it for hours, but she was not going to come. And
Mhm.
like before that book, me was like, I'm not any good. I'm not any good about it. I can't
Yes.
even get this person to come. But it was like, but she's telling you, I'm having a great time. Can you
Mhm.
hear her above your need for performance
Yes.
validation?
I think that's so important because a lot of people, and I know myself too, in previous versions, have been so wrapped up in the outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
rather than being like, just be here and enjoy what's going on right now and enjoy the sensations and the pleasures and all the things that are happening, like be where your feet are. Like this is like a yoga term, like just be very mindful and present.
That's
And
right.
like it may come like, or it may not, but it's such an enjoyable experience to be able to give someone pleasure and also receive without that pressure. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been working with women for 16 years and I'm a personal trainer. And
Mm-hmm.
inside the walls, it's like gym talk in there, right? It's like locker room talk. And we're always hearing women talk. And it's to go back to the SSRIs, that is a huge issue with women being unable to orgasm. So
Mm-hmm.
hearing you say that and focusing on pleasures is something I hope people take away from this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
That's
have
what I
any
hope for
tips
most
for that
people.
as far as that goes?
Yeah. Like taking the focus off the orgasm.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing that I like to ask clients is, what's your favorite part about sex? And I ask everybody. And I think one out of maybe over 500 people had said anything even close about the orgasms. And that's the thing that's interesting to me is when you ask people what their favorite part of sex is, it's
Yeah.
not the orgasm. So then I ask them, why are you so focused on it? It's not
Mhm.
even your favorite part. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh shit. And I'm like, why don't you focus on your favorite part, which is usually like a lot of people will say connection. Some people say the kissing, um, being touched, the sensations. And I'm like, if you focus on all the things that create orgasms instead of focusing on the orgasm itself, then the orgasms get to sneak up on you and they're
Mhm.
more powerful because you don't have frustration bogging your feeling of being turned on down. We call that arousal. So when you're so focused on your orgasm, you're like, am I close? Am I close? Am I close? You tense up your body, usually straighten
Mhm.
your legs out, and you feel yourself start to sweat. And as soon as you're going, am I close? You're not.
Right.
You're not close at all. So that's just the way your brain works. So instead, if you're just like, does this feel good? And that's what I direct them back. Ask yourself, does this feel good? And that'll take you back to the present moment every time. And then once you're there, like, yeah, this does feel good, then ask yourself, how long can this feel good?
Yeah. Prolong
And
that.
and now you're curious instead of judgmental.
Right.
Just
No,
curious.
that's and honestly, it makes it more enjoyable. It takes the stress out of it when you're just focusing on that one component of like, let me just enjoy this and relax into it.
Yes.
I hear a lot about, and I'm sure you hear this as well. In my experience with women struggling to orgasm in general, just
Mm-hmm.
by through penetration or clitoral stimulation, even.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really excited about sex. Do you have like tips for women who struggle with that?
Yeah. Well, usually that what that calls to mind is performance anxiety.
Yeah.
So now you're feeling a need to perform. And what we're doing when we have sex, number one is about connection. And number two, it's about sensation. So as soon as you're in like performance anxiety, now you're an actress. What
Mhm.
you're acting, now you're putting on a show. Well, now you're removed from the thing that makes sex great, which is connection and sensation. You can't feel sensation when you're acting. Now you're just like, does this look good? Does this look good in this light? And usually, like, especially when we're talking about straight women, like if they're with another man, I like to bring it back to, so you're on top, right? What are you doing? Are you bouncing up and down? You're not doing that for you, are you? Because you can barely feel that. I know
Right.
exactly how a vagina works. Like you're
Yeah.
barely
You're
feeling
not
that. You're putting
wrong.
on a show.
Yeah.
And it's like, how often do you sit down and do the thing that actually feels good and just grind on it?
Hmm.
Take his hands, put them on your hips, and just grind in it and get yours. Like he's going to get his. He is going to
I
get his.
love you. I love it.
Get yours, okay?
Yes.
Because that's what pleasure is about. It's like when we're in that place where we're putting on a show for the other person, then we make sex a service. Now you're using your body as a transaction for the space that you take up. Fuck that.
Fuck that.
Like,
I agree.
It's about pleasure. Sex is an experience. It's not a performance. So you need to be there. You need to feel it. It's like when you put something delicious in your mouth, you don't chew it really fast and hurry up and swallow and get it over with.
Savor that shit.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
You make a sound. So do that. Make some noise.
Right. I love where we're going with this because I have a list of questions, but this is not even on here because it's important for me to ask you, or at least bring awareness to the fact that a lot of women still have struggle initiating sex.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, and I will admit this vulnerably here on my podcast, that's because I'm a boss bitch and I'm like, I'm very like straightforward and direct, and this is how I lead my life and all the things. But I still will struggle sometimes with initiating sex because I have this thing where I want to be desired. Like I want that initiation. And I'd say probably the last, I don't know, couple months, I've just been like, because I've been watching your stuff, I'm like, fuck this shit.
Fuck this shit.
I'm like, I'm just going to ask for what I want. If I want it, great. And I'm not going to take it personal if I'm like turned down. And I understand because I know that sometimes I'm not in the mood. It's very rare, but my drive is very high. But what do you suggest for that? Because that's a struggle for a lot of women.
It is a struggle for a lot of women. I work with a lot of lesbians. So when you multiply it times 2, then you get like months and months that nobody's doing anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of that is tied up in thoughts about masculinity, and what masculinity is. Masculine energy is like take charge. And this idea that men always want sex. So if they're not always after you for it, then I must not be that attractive. But wanting sex is not a gendered event. It's not a part of gender expression. We're humans. Like some like a lot of sex, some don't like it that much. You just need to communicate it. But as far as like initiation, there's that fear of rejection.
Yes.
So then it goes back to, I like to ask the question, why are you having sex? Do you need to validate yourself right now? Is that why you're having sex? It's kind of objectifying the other person, isn't it? Yeah. You need to seek your validation from inside. So if you're having sex because you want to, then what does it matter who initiates? And then think about your initiation style. Because it doesn't always have to be like you go over and you start touching somebody. My wife loves to offer herself to me as a way to initiate. And that's her, like, she likes a little more submissive energy. That's what turns her on and gets her arousal going, is for her to trigger like a dominant side in me.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, yeah. Like she'll climb up in the bed and start to just kind of back away. Like if she's sitting on her butt, and then she'll start to inch backwards toward the headboard and give me a look. There is a look of come get this and do whatever you want with it. And I mean, if she needs to be at verbal, she will. She'll just be like, babe, I really want you right now. I like your mouth on my pussy right now. And she'll just say that. And she's very direct, and she's still in her feminine energy. Like if that's important to you to stay in that feminine energy, a lot of us attribute femininity with like surrender. Surrender is powerful and courageous. In a lot of ways, we like to see this as like weak, but shit, you have to own yourself to give yourself to someone. So that is powerful. So if you like to stay in that feminine energy, like offer yourself. And there are ways to do that. Like you can come over and put your hand on their chest and just like take your hand up to their chin and look in their face and be like, I want you right now. Are you on board for this right now? Because I need your mouth on me right now. And just state what you want and then walk away and let them follow you. Like if you needed that feeling of desire for them, then put some space and let them come then. But you can trigger that come get me.
Yeah. Now, I know you talk a lot about partners with different sexual and like needs, right? Like, so if I have high drive and a partner does not, I know you speak on that a lot, and I would love for you to share your tips and insights on that, because I know that my drive is like through the roof, and it's hard for a lot of partners to be able to match that. And so I have managed my own coping mechanisms and things of that sort. But is there something that you can offer the audience in terms of like, don't take that personal?
I mean, I have a couple of different stances on this. Like if you're dating, like you're not in a relationship yet, and you know that you have a high rate of desire, I'm very upfront about that. Like before I got with my wife, going dating, like 2 weeks into dating, I'm like, how important is sex to you?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you like to have sex? I'm very upfront about that, because if you only like to do it twice a month, we're going to be friends. We can be homies. We are
Maybe
not going to be in a
homies.
relationship together.
Did you say
If
homies?
yeah, we can be
How
homies.
old are you? I gotta know.
Like I'm 38.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, a lot of your languaging is very familiar for me. It's awesome.
Yes, it's the 90s.
Mhm.
But like if you're in the relationship and there's like a fluctuation of desire, like for most relationships, you start out fucking like bunnies. You're like,
For
yeah, I
sure.
do it all the time because we got that new relationship energy. And depending on like attachment styles, one person may start to dial it back in their frequency of wanting to have sex. There are a million things that could be happening with that, because low desire, and I'm not talking about like comparing couples when I say low desire, I mean that somebody had more desire 2 weeks ago and now they have less.
Mm.
So that's an experience
Same
of low
person.
desire. Same person.
Mm-hmm.
They've experienced less. So you can ask them questions. You can be like, hey, I noticed that you don't want to have sex as often. Is there something that I can do to make sex more comfortable for you? More,
Yeah.
worth the energy for you? Like getting in there and being direct and assertive about, hey, I want to have sex with you more, but I want to be a part of the support system to help you want to have sex more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pressure you, because that negative shit is terrible. That feeling of
Yeah.
obligation is going to turn somebody off, like that. We haven't had sex in 2 weeks. What's up? Like, no, like, I notice we're not having physical intimacy as much. Is there
Mm-hmm.
something that I can do to help support you wanting to have sex more often? Or make you feel like wanting to get into the mood instead of it just expecting them to be in the mood.
Yeah.
Like that's spontaneous desire, and not everybody has that. And as relationships progress, desire becomes more responsive, meaning you like need something, emotional conversation, intellectual stimulation, new experiences together. Go
Mm-hmm.
make pottery with each other, like Ghost,
Yeah.
make the environment sexy.
Yeah. Well, it seems so simple in theory, right? Like
Mm,
just have a conversation about it. And I
mm-hmm,
find that I know, at least for myself, as an example, and hearing women, it's the struggle to be able to even bring up the conversation. So they just allow it to fester and create resentment. And then it starts to spill over into other areas of their life and they become snippy and all the
mm-hmm.
things. And then everything becomes irritating because they
That's
just
right.
need a fucking orgasm already.
That's right. That's
Not
right.
really. But I think for myself and obviously for you, that comes easy. Like you want something, you're going to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you suggest even starting these types of conversations? Because it can be nerve wracking, right? You
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're bringing something up to your partner that might make them feel a certain way about themselves or, cause some friction. It's breaking the ice is what's the challenge I find.
Absolutely. Because sex and shame are wired together.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really any place on the entire planet that sex and shame are not wired together. In your childhood, likely you tried to go to your parents and ask these questions, and then you got what sex educators, we call it the squig. And it's where your parent scrunches their face up and gives you this negative body language
Right.
when you ask them anything in that direction. They get freaked out. So then that ends up being your idea of what sex is this shameful conversation that you should never have, but you should share this practice with the person that you love.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up.
Totally fucked up. How do we fix
Yes.
this, Whitney?
So we
You're
have
doing a
to,
great job.
right. We
Yeah.
have to confront the shame. You do. You have to ask yourself who you are beneath the shame, the pain, and the programming. And that's your authentic self. There's resources like Vanessa Marin wrote this awesome book, and it was actually behind me. It's called Sex Talks,
Mm.
and it's 5 conversations to have with your sexual partner. So there are books out there that will hold your hand, and you can just be like, hey, babe, can we look at this book together? I have a Patreon where people can be like, hey, babe, can we watch this video together? Because I will have the conversations for you. And that way you can just be like,
Amazing.
this is what I wanted to talk to you about. And I just didn't have the language for, because we don't have sex education. We have disease and reproduction prevention education at best. And other than that, I grew up in Tennessee. So you got abstinence only, where it's just like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
So you have to reach out. Like, don't be ashamed to reach out for resources. Like, you are an amazing person to care enough about your relationship to reach out for those resources. It's not something to feel shameful about. Sex is not something you're born knowing how to do.
Right.
People are always like, oh, I want it to be natural. It's a learned skill.
Yes. Yes.
It is not something you're born knowing how to do, like breathing.
Right.
You got to learn it.
Right. And it takes time for sure.
It does.
I think one thing, and I don't know how you feel about these, I think one thing that has been fun for me to implement, I know in my relationship, and I talk about it occasionally on stories and on my podcast too, is just like those fun little card games that are like relationship debates or like sexy time, spicy time type of cards where you're like playing together. And
yes,
that's so fun for me. I love that. And
yes,
it's so playful. And I've learned so much about my partner through these silly little cards, which we'll link up in the show notes because I have like 6 different decks of cards from different brands. But I don't know. Do you have anything like that or resources like that that you usually advise clients to play with?
I have one that's from Intune, that's from Rhythm, and then I always recommend the Gottmans. I love the Gottmans. They
I
have
have
a
that
free
one too.
app on their phone.
Mhm.
You can do it anywhere you're at. Prompts are great because,
Yes.
like, starting with a blank page gives you writer's block. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And you need the language. So I love those cards to get a conversation started. Making something stressful into a game brings you back to curiosity, pulls you away from judgment. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful mindset shift.
Yeah. And it's super fun. It's playful. You learn so much about yourself too. And it makes you think. You have to really think about yourself and your pleasure and your desires and also your partners. And it's really a great way. Like we've built some really deep intimacy aside from the sexual component with just like learning about our styles and what we like. And it's really fun.
It's so good. I love
Yeah.
to do it with my partner. We'll sit around a bonfire and pull cards and
Yeah.
just go deeper and deeper with each other. And it's
Mhm.
so hot.
It's very hot. It
It's so
builds so much anticipation and like excitement. And then the sex is wonderful.
exactly, because vulnerability makes sex better. People try to like avoid the vulnerability, but vulnerability is like pulling back the layers to get to the raw nerve.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. And it just makes everything so much more electric.
Yeah. Speaking of electric,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk. I want to let's just go all in because I'm really curious about how you maybe coach people or talk about conversation during sex, right? Or like dirty talk and expressing yourself during the act because I have found with my boyfriend right now, the more that we talk during sex, it's
Yes.
like insane. Like
Yes.
the hotness, the intensity,
Yes.
everything. It's like a movie sometimes. So
Absolutely.
do you help women with this too? Like getting comfortable with dirty talk, if that's something they're interested in?
Absolutely. So on my Patreon, I have like a conversation between my wife and I about,
Mm,
it's like a 6-page list of things that you could say during, because people love prompts. So I went over them
yes.
and I read each one to her and she like graded them like, yes, please say that. No, don't ever say that. That one may be in this context.
Okay.
So when people come to me and they're like, I don't know how to dirty talk, I don't know what to say, and I just feel I feel all the shame about it, and I totally understand. Like, awkwardness, it's the first step to hot sex, so just embrace that part right there.
Yeah.
The
I love that.
awkwardness,
Awkwardness is the first step to great sex. Okay.
it
I
is
could get around that.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So I will tell them, try to look for some erotica together, either audio erotica like on Dipsy or I think Wattpad and like Quinn.
Mhm.
Listen to it together and get your giggles out. You're
Yeah.
gonna giggle with each other like, oh, this is so silly.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
your cheeks get warm
Mhm.
and then you start crossing and uncrossing your legs, and then you can kind of watch each other, or if you want to read erotica to each other, this is such a hot practice. Like
I've never done that.
literotica, like online, you can get like free ones and they're short, and you read them to each other. And again, it's like, you can laugh and feel silly at first, like just cut up about it. Like, oh, this is so silly.
Yeah.
But then after time, you're going to start to feel your breath rate change and you're going to heat up. And then you can be like, that scene was fucking hot. Like, if you did that to me, that would just set me on fire. So now, see, I've got you talking about sex, and you've got prompts, and you got to get your sillies out, and you're not having sex in that moment. So it's a little easier. And then, but the things that you read and you see your partner just kind of lose it over, like you see their lips part, or you see their eyes open big, or they kind of stare at you like, damn. Like, you can take note of that and be like, oh, you like the way that was phrased? I'm going to say that in your ear later, while you're deep inside of me.
Yeah.
Like, you can do that. And then you've got these prompts and you've turned it into a game again.
That's fun. That's, yeah, it takes your sex to a whole nother level.
Yes.
If you're used to, at least in my experience, if you're used to just being pretty quiet, enjoying, but not really saying a whole lot during, and you start, it's like putting fire, like kerosene on the fire. Like, you're just,
now you're keeping each other out of performance mindset.
Yes.
You're keeping each other in the present moment. So you have increased the sensation, like, awareness. Now you can sense all of this stuff, and you're getting the feedback and validation that you want in that moment. When you're in your head, you're like, I hope this is good. And they're telling you, you are fucking me up, then it's good. It's like, oh, they said it.
Yes. I love that. So not necessarily the same topic, but kind of, how do you feel about the topic of porn and like people watching porn either themselves or together? I'm sure you have some experience in this realm with clients and whatnot. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that.
With porn. So there are a couple of things. It's like, as a couple, different couples have a different opinions about their partner watching porn by themselves. Some people would constitute that as cheating. You've got to have that conversation with your partner, how they feel about that.
Right.
I make porn with my wife. So
I love that. Yeah.
It's just part of our kink, and it's also part of my business. So I'm on OnlyFans. I think that OnlyFans is wonderful because it's ethical. Like, everything there is like, these two people actually like each other. And there's all the paperwork involved to be like, this person authorized their self to be on here. Like, my wife had to sign her own contract to be on there, or I can't show her. So it's not like some dude taking a video and then sharing it behind
POV.
a woman. That bullshit. So it's all safe. So as long as it's ethical, that's my thing about porn. Like, I want ethical porn. A lot of time when you get on this like production stuff, it's a little dicey. Like, is this ethical? Is everybody here taken care of? But those are just like some thoughts about it. But I think like couples who watch it together it's great. Again, it's just like reading erotica with each other. You can be like, I like that. I didn't like that. He spit on her face. I don't feel good about that.
Right.
Like, or maybe you love that and you're like, yeah, spit on my face. Yes, that was hot. You need to know.
Yeah.
We don't always know what we like until we see it. For my clients, I usually suggest like yes, no, maybe lists.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yes. That's the thing that I suggest. Like, if you don't know what you want, yes, no, maybe lists are a safe way to be like, to just read something and be like, let me think about that.
Yeah.
That's kind of hot. I didn't even know that about myself.
I did an entire podcast with one of my best friends who is a therapist, and we printed out the yes, no, maybe list, and we got on the podcast and I said, okay, let's chat. We're going to go down this list. I'm going to tell you what what these are for me, yes, no, or maybe, and you, and let's talk about why, and like why you think this is hot and this and that. And it was such a popular podcast. We'll link it up in the show notes too, so people can listen to it. But do you have a resource similar to that on your page, or do you direct people to one?
I have it. It's on my website underneath resources, and it's Scarlatine's website. So it has, I think, 5 or 6 different kinds of yes, no, maybe lists. So there's for polyamorous people, there's a different yes, no, maybe list for them if you're going to practice ethical non-monogamy. And then there's like kinky ones, and then more vanilla ones. Like, it's just like, where are you at and what's your flavor?
Yeah. And these are great to do with your partner and then have conversations about. And for those that are like, what are you guys talking about? It's basically a list of different sexual
situations.
situations and things that you might be interested in. Give us like 3 examples.
Like they'll ask you things like, would you ever like to do anal? And you
Yes.
could be like, yes, no, or maybe. And then others can be kinky, like, how do you feel about being tied up? Or how do you feel about tying someone up? Or like the one, what if someone spit on your face? Like, would you think that's hot? Or are you into praise? Would you like to be praised during? Would you like degradation? Like, do you want to be called a cum slut or something like that? And then this keeps you from being triggered in the moment, because then you can be like, don't you ever fucking call me this. This will take me out
It's
of the
important
moment.
to know that. Yeah.
Yes. It's very helpful. And I like it because we're not in the middle of sex. We're not, and this totally sets you up to where you can be like, hey, don't ever do this to me because I'll hate it. And that's
Right.
something that, your sexual partners need to know. Like, okay, never pull your hair. Got it.
Yeah. Love that. No, it's super helpful just to start the conversation. And I think even like we were talking earlier about like, how do you even break the ice about sex? If you have different desires and things like that, this is a fun way to
Yes.
just say, hey, let's talk about this and get the conversation started. It's another great way to start a conversation.
Absolutely. There's a website called mojoupgrade.com that's really great,
Oh,
because you can take the quiz and it's a yes, no, maybe list. And then your partner or like potential partner can take it. And then when you link them together, it only shows the results that you match on. So for people who
oh,
are like, I don't want them to know about this kink,
I love
like,
that.
as
Okay.
long as they don't match with it, they won't know. You can
That's
hold your
so
cards.
nice.
Like,
Yeah, that's so nice. It's a great way to be able to be vulnerable without feeling like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what my partner's going to think.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
amazing. Really great resource. Okay. One thing I was going to ask you too, what is the most common concern or question that you get with what you do?
Mm, most people come to me because of shame.
Mm,
That's a big one. I have a lot of people who come because they have trouble receiving pleasure. More apt is like receiving pleasure. So I see a lot of women, and that's their thing. Like, they are totally in for giving pleasure to someone because their self-worth is tied up in it.
mhm.
And they're like, oh, I'm being productive, I'm producing pleasure, therefore I'm worthy of being here in this space touching your body. But as soon as the tables are turned and the pleasure is focused on them, they get overwhelmed, overstimulated, and they're like, no, I just want it to go back to you. So that, like, not being ready to receive everything you want. Because I mean, there's people who have boundaries and they just don't want to be touched. But what I work with is people who, they want it. They're just having to build the tolerance to being able to receive it.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure because I can resonate with also being in that spot, at some point earlier on. What do you usually start with that? Do you have like exercises for them, like baby steps?
Yeah, I mean, with the shame, we have to start with, it's not so disassociating, but like separating yourself from your limiting beliefs about yourself, because usually that's programming. That's
Yeah.
something that's come in as something that your mom said, your pastor said, an ex-boyfriend said, and you're carrying it with you. So we have to sit down and write them down on a piece of paper and be like, okay, what are your limiting beliefs about self? And it's usually like, I'm not worth the time and the effort for the pleasure. Like, they're worried about this person putting in the effort, and they have to write that down. Well, where did that come from? Well, this one boyfriend, he sighed while he was going down on me. So
Mm,
I'm carrying that with me with every partner. So as we write it down, they start to separate themselves from that. You have to write it down. Oh, that was the ex-boyfriend. That's not even me. And it's like,
yeah.
well, is this thought serving you? Is it serving you in the relationship you're in now? Is the partner you're with now reflecting any of this? It's like, no. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, why are you carrying it? Do you think that thought is keeping you safe? And that's usually what's under there. Oh, that thought's keeping me safe from getting hurt the same way again. But
Mhm.
really what it's doing is it's keeping this new person from getting in and giving you the pleasure that you deserve.
Right. That's amazing work that you're doing. What is your favorite thing about what you do?
Oh gosh, the success stories. Like, I wake up every day to my phone giving me comments where people are like, you changed my relationship. You changed my relationship with sex, or I left a toxic relationship because of you. That one smacks.
That
And
one's
I,
a big one. Yeah.
yeah, like I left a toxic relationship because of something you said. And I always stop to tell these people, I hope you are so proud of yourself because I didn't do that. You did. Like, if you see a change in your life, you did that shit. I may
Hmm.
have been a catalyst, but that's all I am. You did that work. And please take the time to be oh so proud of yourself because that shit was hard.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely hard. It's a lot of work, but it's work that's well worth it. I think it really sets the tone for a lot of other areas of your life. I know it sounds silly, but like when you can really own that power and know that you have that you're worthy of it and all the things, it
Yes,
really does something for you when you walk around in day-to-day life. It really does.
absolutely.
It builds a confidence.
Yes, well, because sex is not separate from who you are in your day to
No.
day. We like
Right.
to think that it's an escape, but what you do find is when you go to have sex, that all the shit that you're avoiding, as soon as you get still enough to have sex, it all comes rushing in. And that's where we find out, oh, I should have worked on this shit because it's fucking up my sex life. It's,
Yeah. I like you dodging it over there. I love that.
yes.
Okay, I do have some of these questions I wanted to get to since we have some time.
Okay.
What are the most common misconceptions or myths surrounding women's pleasure?
Mm, man, number one is like 75% of women um, do not have orgasms with penetration alone.
Hmm.
Like, that's a big one. 75% of, if you have a clitoris, like, that is your sex organ. And you need to remember that, like, the penis is the homologue to the clitoris. So both of these need erections and both of these need stimulation. Like, if you are in a relationship with a man, like, you don't just focus on his balls the whole time. That is the same as a man focusing on your vagina the whole time and
Hmm.
thinking that you're going to orgasm. Like, you're not just going to ignore his penis the entire time and be like, okay, come. Like, some of them can.
Yeah,
Some of them can. Pretty low percentage
it's
though.
very rare.
So you're going to need some focused attention directly to your clitoris. And like, some have very sensitive clitorises and you need a little indirect stimulation, but it's still like we need that external stimulation. And women will come to me and they'll say that I'm broken. I can't come like this. It's like, no, you're very normal. And most people with this anatomy, like, they need that external stimulation. It's like, if you want to do it at the same time, I've heard women tell me stories where they're with a man and he'll take her hand and move it away. Like, you need to put your pants on. If a man reaches down to move your hand and he's not going to put a toy or his own hand there, get the fuck out.
Okay,
Like,
so you're saying if a man
mm-hmm.
takes his hand and just puts it directly on your vagina.
Like, if he is, like, you're having sex, he's got his
Yes.
penis in your vagina and
Okay,
you're
gotcha.
having penetrative sex and you reach down to stimulate your clitoris to make this more pleasurable. And
Correct.
he takes your hand and moves it away because his ego is stuck in, I just need my dick to make this happen for you.
Okay, great. I love that you just spelled this out for us. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that story upsets me every time I hear it from a woman. They're like, I was with this guy and we were having penetrative sex and I went to stimulate my clitoris and he moved my hand. And I'm like, to put his hand on there? No. No. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, that's how she's getting pleasure. Like,
Right.
women are like a symphony. We need stimulation in all kinds of places, not just singular stimulation in one place. Like,
Yes.
the more you stimulate us in different places, the better everything gets. Like, you need to, like, synthesize it, like, play
Yeah.
with everything and not centralize it. Like, just
Right.
penetration is going to do it. Some women can, but that
Hmm.
needs to be communicated. Like, and like, a lot of women will just endure it and be like, well, let me perform this for him. No, no, you're just
No,
going to lose desire for it. You're not going to want to have sex with this person again.
precisely. Would you agree that the brain is the first sexual organ?
The biggest sex organ. It's
Yeah.
the main thing. It's the
Yeah.
main show. Dr. Wise has this beautiful research where she put women into a functioning MRI and took imagery of them when they were touching their clitoris or touching their nipples and shows how the brain lights up. And then she put them back in and she says, okay, I just want you to imagine touching those places. So no physical stimulation, just mental, the same and more places lit up in the brain.
Do you guys hear that?
Like,
I want my audience to know, like, this is a mental game.
it is a mental game.
Yeah, it's such a mental game.
Absolutely. When you're talking about your boyfriend talking to you during,
yeah,
yes, that talk stimulates your genitals.
Oh,
You can
100%.
talk about it. Yeah. And it will work. So
Yeah.
it's like fill up that space that you're feeling with anxiety with talk and check-ins and stuff, and like replace that. And your brain will stimulate all those places without actually touching them.
Yeah. It's incredible. I think I've read
it.
that somewhere. I've been reading a lot of like books on relationships and sex and open relationships and all the things. And I think it was maybe it was The Ethical Slut where I read that. One. Yeah. That's and I was like mind blown. Like it's like I knew that because I know for myself like what gets me going, and it's definitely my mind, right? That has to be stimulated. But it was yeah, it's something that I think more women and people in general, honestly, men and women, would benefit from knowing that, like, you got to get the mind going.
Absolutely. Esther Perel says that women are actually more apt to get bored with sex before men are, because we need that auditory. We need that little bit of something else other than just like the physical action. Like we get bored with that. She's like, no, you got to talk to me. You got to tell me how this makes you feel. Like, tell me what you're getting out of this. Like, that's what makes it more interesting.
I love Esther Perel and all of her work. It's amazing.
It's good stuff.
Okay. In the realm of sexual wellness and empowerment, what positive trends or developments have you observed in the recent years?
Oh, gosh. There's been a flood in the sex science realm, big time. 2015 was when Dr. Nagoski came with Come As You Are. Mm-hmm. And after that, it seems to be like a huge flood. Like my bookshelf over here is full of everything that's been written in those years. Things like the mental aspect of sex have really been expanded on, and the female body itself is getting more and more. Like we're just now getting nerve mapping of the clitoris for people who do surgery on female pelvises. Like that wasn't there before. Women would go in to get labiaplasty, which I got my thoughts about that. Yeah. But like they go in and they get their inner labia cut down, and because there wasn't nerve mapping in these textbooks for surgeons, they would like partially cut the clitoris and like desensitize these women doing these surgeries that are, most of them are cosmetic. I realize in some cases there are women who have labia that are so long it's painful for them to have sex. It gets dragged up inside. Mm-hmm. That's another situation. But if you're doing it just to appease like a beauty standard, right? I hate that, and my heart breaks that women feel like they need to do that. But when they'll go in to go to the surgeries, part of their clitoris will get cut, and these nerves are huge. Like they're not microscopic. It's like as big as that cord hanging out of your headphone there. Yeah. It's wild to me. But we have all this information about penises. It's just a very penis-centered culture. The whole globe is patriarchal. We can't help that. We're trying to. Mm-hmm. But so nerve mapping of the clitoris is huge. Getting to know the female body more, that your brain is the biggest sex organ. That's a huge one. Dr. Michael J. Bader has a beautiful book that I love called Arousal, The Secret of Your Sexual Fantasies. Okay. It talks about how you access being turned on, and how to get there, you have to meet with your limiting beliefs about yourself to access that. So like people have different kinds of kinks, like people with a praise kink, they're overriding some negative narrative in their head, because if you hold that negative narrative, you can't get turned on. Yeah, like, definitely. It's a roadblock. You have to have psychological safety, which is like safety in to be your true self, to be the most turned on you can be. Yeah, great stuff. And honestly, I think anybody listening needs to go check out your Patreon and all those things, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, because you have such an abundant amount of resources on there. Yeah. And it's great. I think
I got lost one night. I was up at 3 a.m. I don't know how. I think you were on the For You page of like Instagram or the, the search place. And I'm like, what's this? And I just tapped on that. And then till like 4:30 in the morning, I think I was like deep in the creep on your Instagram. And I was like learning all the things. It was wonderful. I was like, I need to get this woman on my podcast. But yeah, I think what you're doing is amazing. So
thank you.
One other question I had that was on here, because this is another thing that I hear often, is if you have a partner who is very self-conscious in their body and one partner who is not, and the partner who is like very confident and comfortable, how can they help their partner and in opening up in that realm, right? Like there's lots of things. Like I have a client that's like, I love to take showers with my partner. My husband doesn't like that. He's self-conscious and things like that. So what are some tools and tips for the body shaming type of thing that some people are dealing with?
Oh man, that one's hard, because there's only so much we can do as the partner, as someone going through that, because what they're going through is very internal. So it's almost like the more compliments we give them, the more overstimulating that is, because they're already at a place where it's hard to receive. And there's this negative narrative that's screaming on the inside. So every time you come and you're like, but you're so sexy to me and you're so beautiful. And they just kind of like, it's like spaghetti on glass, because they're like, I don't hear any of that because I don't believe that. So I think that you're just saying that to me because you love me and you're trying to make me feel better, but that's not true. So that person has really got to make a decision to be like, wow, this negative narrative that I've got going is keeping me from receiving what my partner's trying to give to me. I've got to do something about this myself.
Yeah.
Sonia Renee Taylor has a beautiful book called Your Body is Not an Apology, or The Body is Not an Apology.
Amazing. I love that title already.
I fucking love that book. And she takes you through this radical journey of self-acceptance. She pushes on you and asks you these questions through the book. And I mean, at the beginning of the book, she's like, look, this book is not going to fix you, but it is going to start to get in there in your head and make you see that this ride that you're on is keeping you from experiencing your reality around you, and you're not able to receive.
I love that. That's a great tool. We'll link that up too. But it's a common one I hear often.
Yes,
I have clients that are just like, either they're struggling with their partner who is having some, some shame or some issues around that, or themselves. They're like, I could never have sex with the lights on. I'm like, what? I want all the lights on. I want fluorescence on. I want everything.
Right.
I mean, not really, but and sometimes it's just not people's thing. They like the mood of like the darker room and things like that. So I think it's just honestly too sometimes person specific with
it is. I mean, if the person who's experiencing that comes forward and they're like, what should I do? Then it's like, okay, you can start with this book. And then usually I would suggest like working with a therapist, because there's something deep in there that you're hanging on to, and it needs to be processed. It's like, once you get it out there in front of you and you can look at it, it's something tangible that you can like look at, like in a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
It's easier. But like when it's deep inside of you, you think that is you.
Right. You start associating that as who you are.
That's just who I am.
Yeah.
That's just who I am as a person. And it's like, no, that's a program.
It is definitely a program. Okay. 2 last questions. What do you wish more women knew?
Oh, wow. What do I wish that more women knew? That pleasure is your birthright. That it's not something that you have to earn or strive or toil for. It's simply something that you have to prepare yourself to receive, because it's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. Pleasure is all the time. It's in a sunrise. It's in it's fall now, so the crunching of leaves beneath your feet, and it's in your warm cup of tea that you enjoy. Like if you'll take the moment to smell it, feel your mouth water for it, feel the anticipation in your body ready for it, and take a sip of it, and then ask yourself, where else in my body do I feel this delicious flavor? Like, sensuality is happening all the time. If you make it a daily practice, it's not so discombobulating when you go to have sex, because you're already a sensual person.
Do you live like a very pleasure-filled life? Is this how you live your life now?
it is a practice. Pleasure is a
Mhm.
practice, and I institute it every single day.
Yeah. Like, give us some non-sexual ways that you incorporate it. Like, what are a couple things that are like your every day?
Oh, like getting in the shower and sugar scrubbing is a big one for me because
Yeah. Right.
it's so vigorous
Hmm.
that I can't ignore it. It's just like, oh God, it feels so good. And then I just let it penetrate me all the way to my core. I'm like, this feels so good.
Yeah.
And then when I get out and I put like my heavy duty moisturizers on and then take care of my face and look myself in the mirror, and I'm like, I love you, Whitney. I love you so
Hmm.
much. I love that you take care of me. And that took a lot of work, because I love you was just like, you're okay. You're okay. I kind of like you,
Yeah.
and
I
start
kind of like
there.
you. You're all right.
You're all right. You're doing a good job,
Yeah.
and I say that in the mirror. And now it's like, I love you so much. Like, you show up for me, and like just dating myself like I would anyone else,
Hmm.
because it is that process. But like now it's like, just like I say, when I sip my tea, I slow down. I slow down for everything that brings me joy. I don't rush through it. I make time for it
I
on
love that
purpose.
so
Like,
much. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. It's a practice of mindfulness without like you really realizing it, I guess,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like you're just like,
Mhm.
oh, you're so here with that experience
Yes.
that it's great. I do the same thing. I have the same like little built-in rituals. I like to buy
Yes.
things that make me feel a type of way. Like when I buy
Yes.
something now, more so, I look at things and I'm like, how does this make me feel? Like,
Yes.
when I hold this, like I just got this new condo, right? So I'm
Yeah.
starting from scratch and I'm buying a lot of new things. And so when I'm buying things, it's taking me so long to make decisions because I just
Hmm.
don't want to buy anything. I'm like, how do these cups make me feel when I'm drinking from
Yes.
this glass? Like it makes me feel
Yes.
luxurious, or just
Yes.
things like that. I just like more texture to my life than just a bunch of randomness.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
so fucking important. It's so important.
it's
Like
very important. Yeah.
when I choose my teacup, I'm like, does this feel
Yes.
good in my hand? Because
Yeah,
I'm going to be spending some time here.
for sure. Yeah. Okay, and then my last question is, what do you wish more penis owners knew about
Hmm.
vagina owners?
Like, help them take their shame off as you're helping them out of their clothes. And
Mm,
like, if you need help with that too, like, voice that, because I know that like this isn't a gendered experience of feeling shame, but in
yeah.
our society, we put a lot of shame on vaginas, how they smell, how they look, how they taste, like on vulvas, like especially how they look, like how they smell, how they taste. Something I practice with my wife is called pussy worship, where I just lay her on the bed and I'm like, are you ready to receive a lot of attention right now? And she can say yes. And then I will lay down in between her legs with my little feet up, just happy to look at her. And I will
Yeah.
describe what her pussy looks like to me and how it makes me feel. And then I'm watching it change as she's getting aroused. It starts to blossom into a flower and open up for me. And I tell her how thankful I am that she lets me touch her pussy, how thankful I am to taste it, how delicious it is. And I peel off all of that shame culture so that she can receive me.
Yeah.
Because
That's
otherwise, women are
amazing.
usually in their head like, "Oh my God, I hope I taste good. I hope I smell good,"
All the
and
things.
they're
Right.
scared while you're down there. So if you can like give some feedback, even if it's just a
Yeah.
like, you help her be able to receive you in that
Yeah.
moment.
I love that's beautiful. And it actually reminded me as you were talking about that, I believe that's the first video that I saw of yours
Oh
where
yeah,
you were talking about like, I want to taste you. Like you were just going off and I was like, okay, I like this girl. What is she talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
Because I know for myself as a vagina owner, that's definitely
Hmm.
something that's crossed my mind a
Yeah,
thousand times, right? Being
of
with a partner
course.
is like, oh, I don't know. And like, mine doesn't look like everyone else's, like I'm going through that whole inner dialogue. But when I have a partner who is just like that,
Yes,
who is
enthusiasm.
all about it,
You
it's like,
forget it.
I'm willing to do whatever you want,
Yeah. And then you're
pretty
ready to
much.
receive, like you're
Yeah,
open, you can immerse in the moment. And that's sexy. Like,
very.
I know there's a lot of men out there who can be like, hey, don't you just love it when a woman is enthusiastic to receive what you're throwing down and giving you feedback about how good you're doing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you love that.
exactly. Good shit.
But yeah.
I love that.
Oh, and what you're talking about, like you're worried about because your vulva doesn't look like everybody's, go
Yes.
to the vulvagallery.com
Okay.
and look at the wide array of
Okay.
uniqueness that the vulvas come in, because penises are all different too. Like they're
Oh,
all
for
like
sure.
thumbprints. It's all unique. Some are curved
Mhm.
to the right, to the left, short. Some are growers, not showers yet.
Yeah.
It's
All of that.
like, yeah, all that.
Yeah.
It's the same with vulvas. I think it's helpful if you see that they're all unique and they come
Mhm.
in different shapes, sizes, colors. The lips don't match, they're
Yeah.
siblings, not twins. It's
They're
okay.
siblings. I love that. That's actually great. I definitely will have to do that because it's, it's something that I know myself. I've had self-conscious, moments about, but I hear women about, women talk about
Yeah,
this all the time. So
sure.
it's a great resource.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well, this
amazing.
was really fun. I
Oh,
enjoyed
thanks.
this.
I liked
I'm
it.
thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think we'll
Sure.
we'll end it there so we can give you some more time in your day. But what types of programs do you offer? I would like to know that as some parting
Mhm.
stuff, programs and services, and then
Yeah,
where can people connect and find you?
absolutely. The best place to connect with me is on my website. It has everything, all my platforms, everything I offer is at bde-moves.com. You'll also find lots of resources on there. What I offer right now is I have a couples coaching program, and it's 10 weeks. I do still have some space for like single Pringles if you're wanting to work on something by yourself. It's also
Mhm.
a 10-week program. Most of those programs start out the same, but once I figure out what's going on, then it starts to get customized and
Yeah, makes
personalized to the
sense.
people in it.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Um, I'm launching group coaching next month. That's usually for like my late blooming lesbians. I do a workshop for them every
I saw
month, and
that. Yeah.
it's like 2.5 hour long workshop. And I started to see we're just scratching the surface in this 2.5
Mhm.
hours. So I'm going to start offering group coaching, and that's like we'll do a 1 hour Zoom bi-weekly and come together and discuss an entire topic for the whole month. And I'll give everybody homework.
Okay. So
I'm
they'll
real
have
big
like
on
things to
homework.
work on in between.
Absolutely. If you
Yeah,
don't work on it in between, nothing's going to happen. I
for
can't talk
sure.
to you and change
Yeah.
your life. That's not real.
And this
That's
is
not real.
for couples or
The group coaching is for anybody who feels like they could benefit from it. It does have a queer perspective on it, but it's
Mhm.
helpful to everybody because we go over compulsory heterosexuality, the effects on that on your relationship when you do anything compulsory. If
Mhm.
you think it's a should, then it's
Right.
probably something we should sit down and look at.
Yeah.
Um, but then I have like my Patreon. That's the most affordable way to get in to work with me. It's just $15 a month, and I
Mhm.
make videos on there once a week. And you can direct message me if you don't see something that you like, and be like, "Hey, haven't seen this video yet. Could you make this?" I'll custom make it. Most of those videos are anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes long, and we go deep into just like one single topic. I have a lot of
Amazing.
demos on there, like the pussy worshiping I was talking about.
Mhm.
My wife is awesome and lets me demo everything on her. So if you're like, what the hell is pussy worship and how does
Yeah.
that work? I have an entire video tutorial where I'll show you exactly how to do it on a vulva model, but you'll also get to see me do it live with my wife and see her reactions and what we talk about and how I talk to her.
I love literally how hands-on all of your
Yeah.
stuff is. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like you
just
get
like try
in
to
there.
demystify everything.
You got to
Yeah.
get in there.
Yeah, you got to. You got to. It helps relieve the anxiety. People are like, "Oh, steps. All right."
Yes, I need a checklist, Whitney. Okay.
I know. I know.
I wish the human body was that easy, but you've got some other amazing things that you're doing too, aside from your own work, right? Are you doing some workshops or speaking elsewhere? Did I miss that, or was that?
I was the keynote speaker at the SMUT conference in Orlando
Yes.
this past week. Yeah, I got
Okay.
to speak in front of about 400 erotica authors and hype them up for their weekend, where they went to
Amazing.
kink workshops and things like
Yeah.
that and learned how to write about kink from an accurate perspective so we don't get 50 shades of gray again.
Yeah, exactly.
We had to make sure.
Definitely that's not even kink. It like it's
No,
a
it
great
would.
little teaser, but it's not the reality.
If Christian Grey would have been in a trailer park with a fly swatter, it would have been an episode of SVU instead of 50 Shades of Grey. So.
Yes, you're correct. That sounds about right. Well, this was really, really fun. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm going to link everything up in the show notes. You guys have to
Thank you.
follow Whitney and check out all her work and keep doing what you're doing. I'm definitely a fan. So thank you so
Awesome. I
much.
appreciate it. Thank
You have a
you.
great day.
You too.
All right. Bye.